Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cameras and Coffee. Very important question. It's Friday. I'm unemployed. What on earth am I even doing up this early? No one knows. That is how much I love doing these videos with you guys. So earlier in the week, we talked about Canon and the R5 being an internal brand failure. And the general crux of what I was getting at with that video is that failures like that happen when the brand isn't communicated to the staff, when the staff don't buy into the brand, when there's no clear internal understanding among anyone or major decision makers, at least, as to what the brand is. So the idea behind that video is that I don't think there's going to be lasting brand damage to Canon, but it does indicate that they probably need to re-educate some of their staff on what it means to produce a Canon camera. So today we're going to talk about Kodak. And the problems Kodak is having are also a brand failure, but a different type, an external brand failure. So what's Kodak do? What do? They make film, right? Well, yeah, they also make printers, printer kiosks, printer paper, lots and lots of different photographic stuff. And that's what they've been thought of. They're a company that used to be major, is now relatively minor with a market cap. I think it's like 100 million. No, that's not quite right. That's got to be higher than that because their revenues last year were like 350 million. At any rate, so they don't have the market cap they once did. They don't have the sales volume, the revenue, or the profit that they once did. In fact, their brand name, amazingly, has been almost completely forgotten by people who are much younger than their mid-30s anymore. And hearing some of the younger stock analysts discuss Kodak over the last couple of weeks, none of them knew who Kodak was from Adam. We're talking about a camera company that used to be ubiquitous in its brand recognition. I mean, if you think back even into the 90s, there was nobody who was into photography. There was nobody who took a picture who didn't know who Kodak was. That's a whole lot of brand erosion in the last few years. Well, last couple decades. But that's not the brand problem that they have right now. What happened, so a little bit of history on the Kodak. I'm sure most of you know what happened. They announced that they were going to get a $765 million loan from the federal government to make base products for generic pharmaceuticals. Their stock shot up. Then there was some funny stuff going on with the stock. Some people like Senator Elizabeth Warren said, hey, we need the SEC to investigate. Something's not going right here. And their stock cratered compared to what it was for the span of a day. And then the news came out that there were some fishy stock option things going on with the senior management, people specifically who would have known about the deal with the government because they would have been involved in making it. And then that raised eyebrows as there is some insider trading happening. So that's the crib notes version of what's going on. Why did that happen? And I'm going to tell you right now, I think the fundamental thing with it, so here's how that all came to be. When the stock was selling at $2 a share for years, and then a few days, I think it was maybe a day or two before the announcement, the stock ticked up, dropped a little bit, and then the announcement, and the stock skyrocketed. That pre-tick is what raised people's eyebrows, because that is a potential fingerprint that somebody either inside or outside of the company knew this was happening, told some people it was happening, and they bought stock cheap. And a bunch of people, enough to have an influence on the stock's value shortly before the announcement. So it sounds like there is a potential that that whole thing is really just a PR issue, that there was an accidental press release, it was retracted, some people saw it anyway and made purchasing decisions. And so let's hope that's what it is. That's like that is best case scenario, right? But I'm going to tell you the underlying fundamental reason all of this happened is because Kodak doesn't manage the external perception of their brand. When I said what Kodak does, they make film, they make paper, they make printers, they make kiosks, they make a lot of really neat photographic stuff. The key word repeated through all of those is make. They have like 12 million square feet or some insane amount of currently idle manufacturing capabilities in Rochester, New York. They're a chemical company. Kodak, for its whole life, has made photographic chemicals. Chemicals that have effectively the same base compounds as pharmaceuticals. In the middle of this pandemic, distilleries have gone from making booze to making hand sanitizer because distilleries make alcohol. Alcohol is the basis of hand sanitizer. It's not an impossible change to go from, well, it's actually a very easy change to go from making alcohol to hand sanitizer. But that's the same basic principle we're talking about with Kodak. They take compounds, and it's not meaningfully harder to take those compounds that are made, that they use to make film products and turn them into pharmaceuticals. Many of the compounds between film and pharmaceuticals, believe it or not, overlap. There's only a finite number of elements. There's only a finite, even smaller number of elements that have any sort of significant use when it comes to manufacturing chemicals. So, I'm not a chemist. I can't tell you exactly what all those different compounds are, but I can tell you that there is going to be overlap between those. So, Kodak, what Kodak should have been doing over the past couple of decades is managing an outward appearance of a brand as a manufacturing entity, not as simply a photographic supplier. Why couldn't they be a subcontractor and manufacture things for other companies? I don't know. That could be a way to make some money. Maybe they do, and they just don't brand it, which would be another outward brand failing. The core reason that people's eyebrows were raised at this loan is because people who know of Kodak think of them as a photographic film company and a photographic products company. Now here they go getting a loan, an agreement to get a loan in the quantity of about 2.25 years gross revenue for them. They made like $350 million last year, 360. $765 million is a huge cash influx for a company of that size. Think about how much of a difference it would make in your life if somebody came up to you and said, I'll give you a loan for 2.25 times your annual salary to do what you already do. Huge difference in your life, right? So they get this agreement to do this loan that's outside of their perceived sole market. What if they had been branding themselves as a chemical manufacturer, as an environmentally friendly chemical manufacturer, or something along those lines for the last 5 or 10 years? No one would have batted an eye that this loan came their way, even though there is zero reason Kodak can't do exactly what it is they want to do with this loan money. Outward brand perception. So, I mean, 5 years, this is all 2020 hindsight. 5 years ago, there would have been no reason for Kodak execs to sit down and say, we need to change our brand to be more of a manufacturing company. In fact, very easily that could have been perceived as a bad business decision because of the Stigma associated with the environmental damage of manufacturing chemicals. That's why chemicals are mostly made in China and India, by the way, including all of the base compounds for generic pharmaceuticals. Oh yes, they're made almost entirely in China and India. I used to work for a generic pharmaceutical manufacturer, by the way. So what happens to Kodak in the future? I know that there are a lot of you who have asked me that question, and I'm going to give you the short is I don't know. Here's what I think. There are some likely scenarios. Most likely scenario, they come out and they say this was a PR mistake. There was this accidental press release. It wasn't supposed to happen. Our marketing person made a mistake. They've been punished in some way, probably not fired, probably they'll get a stern talking to. And it was a goof, it will not happen again. Obviously we can't accept this loan now, or they can, we'll see. That's the most likely scenario, is that they come out and they say this was a human error mistake, here's the person who made it, they've learned from their mistake, we promise to be better citizens. And life continues on for Kodak as it would have without this blip. That's and some fortunate people will have made a boatload of cash off of this. And some unfortunate ones will have ended up losing a boatload of cash if the stock goes back to $2. Anyway, that's my best guess as to what's going to happen. I think that's the most probable outcome. What do I want to see happen? Oh, there's another potential outcome. The SEC is a powerful government entity in the US. I've worked in the last 15 years for a number of companies that interact with different government agencies. Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Justice, Food and Drug Administration. Did I say energy? I think I did. An Environmental Protection Agency, a handful of others that aren't coming to mind right now. When you work for a Department of Defense contractor, you also get involved with DCAA, Defense Contractor Auditing Agency, and then DCMA, Defense Contractor Management Agency. There are exactly 2 government agencies that I have heard executives be afraid of. I've heard executives many times when I worked at a pharmaceutical company. Actually, I worked at 2 pharmaceutical companies, but at any rate, both of them they did the FDA compliance because they were required to. They weren't afraid of the FDA. In fact, I have heard pharmaceutical people refer to the FDA as basically a governmental industry group. And I don't think that's an entirely unearned characterization, quite frankly. There are 2 governmental agencies that I have consistently heard people in positions of power within companies be afraid of. The Defense Contractor Auditing Agency, for sure, and the SEC. Those are 2 agencies whose authority and power people don't take lightly, and they don't joke about. So an SEC investigation is a major thing, and it is potentially damaging not as much to Kodak as it would be to people who partook in insider trading. If the SEC is able to determine that insider trading occurred, it would be, best guess, a bigger issue for the people who partook in it. I can't imagine the SEC would fine Kodak if it turned out that executives were insider trading. I think the SEC would just go after the executives. Best guess. I have fortunately in my life never been in a position where I've been at a company that has been under SEC investigation. I've been reading up on it a little bit, and that's the best guess I can give you. So in either of those scenarios, life basically goes on for Kodak, and things are fine. They keep making very high quality film. They keep employing some of the most talented, if not the most talented, film chemists in the industry. They keep coming up with creative products that they subcontract out, like some of their little cameras and things like that. Kodak makes a lot of really cool stuff, and I love their products, and my sincere hope and belief is that life goes on for them pretty much unaffected. Best case scenario is they still get this loan, they leverage it to turn it into an expansion of services, and that they're able then to use some of those expanded services as a long-term business line that provides the kind of profit needed to continue the film business. Looking at Kodak's balance sheet over the last few years isn't a story you want to read your kids before they go to sleep. Okay, it's not super rosy. So will they get to a point where they sort of level off and they have like this much in sales and this much in profit, and it just stays that way year on year? I suspect so. That's the way that that film will go. But it would be nice to see them be a chemical company and be able to, in an environmentally friendly way, manufacture some other chemicals that can be used for other products. It's a standard cliche. You don't put all your eggs in a basket. You don't put all of your business goals in the photographic basket. It's a luxury item, and when the economy tanks, photography spending tanks, right? So if you are a company that has the ability to produce photographic chemistry, component chemistry for pharmaceuticals, component chemistry for other manufacturing industries, if you can diversify into a few different fields, then that company can bolster itself against swings in the economy. This sector tanks, this sector does all right in the same year. A few years later, this sector comes back. Well, now this third sector tanks. But overall, everything sort of balances out. So I think the best case, and my sincere hope for Kodak, is that they recognize that they can do more, that they have the capabilities to do more, and be more of a manufacturing powerhouse, that they can take the talent that they have, the incredibly skilled staff that they have, the resources that they have, and take that and turn it into something that diversifies their product base away from just the relatively limited line of what it is now. That's the best outcome. And hopefully someone at the helm is looking at the situation they're in right now, realizing that and acting on it. At any rate. So I hope that sort of clarifies I hope that takes away some of the questions about what was happening with Kodak. And I hope that perspective on it, like my goal was with the Canon video, looks at the root cause of why this even got to this point and what could have been done differently to prevent it. So at any rate, everybody, have a wonderful Friday, and we'll be back next week with our normal coffee mug. Steinbeck won't be ticked off at me for not letting him have any of my coffee. And have a good weekend. Take some great photos.